Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to a brand new long distance walk series. This here is the city of Southend, and that is Southend Pier over there, and it's one of the longest in the country. I think it's almost 2 kilometres right to the end, and there is a little train shuttle service that takes you all the way to the end. Now I'm here to actually start the Saffron Trail. It's a 71-mile long distance walk. It is waymarked, although very poorly so far, in Southend here. And it ends at Saffron Walden, so it's named after the spice of saffron, which was actually farmed in the area around Saffron Walden. So the opening 5 kilometres or so of this trail follows the edge of the Thames Estuary, and this is the River Thames next to me here. It's very broad, and on the far side is the county of Kent. And then from there I'm going to head inland slightly over to the medieval fortress of Hadleigh Castle, and then I'm actually going to end this part in the little sort of suburb of Southend called Eastwood. I actually parked there and got the bus to the start this morning. So I've just reached Leigh-on-Sea, and there's a little train station. There's lots of pubs and little cafes and things like that all along the estuary. And it's here where I actually come away from the England coast path. That actually continues all the way down over in that direction. I'm actually heading inland and uphill. You can hear me getting out of breath a little bit because I think I've got to gain about 120 feet or so. And then that's going to lead me along a little kind of ridge, I think, towards Hadleigh Castle, which I'm really excited to see soon. I'm up at Belton Hills Nature Reserve, and I've got this incredible view right across the Thames Estuary. There's Kent on the far side. I can see right in the distance over to Dartford Crossing, and I think I can make out the buildings like Canary Wharf in London. So this incredible ruin here is Hadleigh Castle, and it dates back to about 1215, although there were extensive restorations and rebuilds here in around sort of 1360 and 1370, which is where these two end towers come in. The distinctive towers of Hadleigh Castle still dominate the coastal marshes of the Thames estuary, and later on in the 14th century it became a favourite royal residence of King Edward III, and it had fantastic views over the marshes and extensive hunting grounds. And of course all of this is protected as a scheduled ancient monument and in the care of English heritage. So it's here I'm going to have a sit down, have a little bite to eat, try and rehydrate because it's exceptionally hot today, and then I'm going to go back down towards the marsh to then go back up the hill on the other side through a rare breeds farm. So I've just passed through the town of Hadleigh, and I was actually surprised at how urban this opening stretch of the trail is. Of course, you know, it's nice walking along the edge of the estuary, but actually, you know, you're right on the edge of Southend, and then you go through a lovely bit of countryside around Hadleigh Castle, but then you then go through the town itself. And now I've just entered Great Wood Nature Reserve, so it's nice to get back to a little bit of rural kind of scenery. This is my first woodland of the trail, and it's quite dense and very, very pretty. I think most of these look like beech trees, and there's a few oaks as well. There's a gorgeous oak in front of me, so I imagine there's quite a lot of wildlife in this little area here. But then literally as I leave this nature reserve in probably 700 metres, maybe a kilometre's time, I then enter Eastwood, which is a bit of a large suburb, I think, of Southend. So I'm back into sort of urban territory again. So thankfully, after this day, the remaining sort of 60 miles of the trail are surprisingly rural. So I only go through Chelmsford. That's the next kind of big settlement on the trail. There's lots of little villages, but other than Chelmsford and then Dunmow, I don't think I pass through an actual town or a city until I get to the end at Saffron Walden. I am 15 kilometres into the walk now, and I've just arrived at Eastwood. I've crossed the busy dual carriageway and I've just gone through this little recreation field, and I'm literally just going to follow this little lane up towards the car park that I parked at today. And if you are going to do this in one continuous stretch, there may be some accommodation here for you. If not, there are good bus links into Southend. So if you have enjoyed this part of the walk, please hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell to keep up to date with future uploads, and I'll see you in part 2. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the Saffron Trail here in Essex, where I'm on part 2 of this lovely trail. And I've just left Eastwood, and today is about 10 miles, somewhere around 16 kilometres. Now I'm going to head north for a bit. That's going to take me around the village of Hadleigh, and then I'm going to head around Hadleigh as well to join the estuary of the river Crough. And then the final probably 5 kilometres or so is going to follow the edge of the river into Battlesbridge. So I'm just starting to head around Hadleigh now, and I'm on a little bit of a hill here. The ground actually just slopes away to my right, and I can see round to the houses on the edge of Hadleigh, but beyond that there are some wind turbines right on the horizon. They're at Southminster, and that is about 10 miles away. And then just behind the trees on my left, hopefully I'll get a view as I work my way around, is Mount Bovers, which is a Grade 2 listed house that dates back to the 17th century, but it could be a bit earlier than that. So I'm still skirting the edge of Hadleigh at the moment, and I'm actually in Hadleigh Wood, and it's quite a dense bit of woodland. And this part of the trail actually follows a section of the Roach Valley Way, which is another waymarked long distance route. That one being only 23 miles, and it follows a circular footpath around the countryside near Rochford. So I'm now out of Hockley and I'm on the top of a little ridge of land that heads north down towards Hullbridge. That's my next sort of settlement that I will bypass because that's where I actually join the River Crouch. But I've actually got a lovely view over the top of the field here. Look, to the ridge on the other side. That's on the other side of the River Crouch. So that's probably a good 6 or 7 miles away because I think the River Crouch is about 3 kilometres north of where I am. So I'm now starting my little circumnavigation of Hullbridge. This path I'm following here is going to lead me along the eastern side of the village, and then I'm going to head through the recreation ground to join the River Crouch. And I'm actually going to look for somewhere around there to stop and have a little bit of a break because it's now 12:10 and I've done just under 10 kilometres. So by the time I get there, it'll be about 11 kilometres, leaving the final sort of 5 along the glorious riverbank of the Crouch. So I'm now down by the River Crouch and the tide's out and there's plenty of wildlife. There's lots of gulls along the foreshore here. I've actually seen some redshank as well. But I'm going to find somewhere just a bit further down to sit down and have some lunch and actually just see what I can see here and just enjoy the peace down by the river. Well, Hullbridge was a real delight and very unexpected, and there are lots of benches all along that section of riverbank, so there's plenty of choice just to sit down and enjoy the view over the River Crouch. And I'm actually on the riverbank path now. This is the final section of the river before I join the road and then follow that in towards Battlesbridge. But I've got a couple of miles still to go. I actually think maybe the houses over there could be Battlesbridge. I'm not 100% sure, but still got some gorgeous riverbank walking left to do. Well, I'm now on the road in towards Battlesbridge, and after probably the most peaceful and beautiful sections of the trail so far, I'm now on this road that seems to be everyone's racetrack. There have been so many cars coming down here for such a small road, and to make it worse, there is almost no verge. I've got a tiny bit of verge next to me here, which is great, but most of this section is literally hawthorn right next to the road. You cannot get out of the way of the traffic, and it's really, really quite dangerous. And to top it off, people are shouting abuse at me for being in the road. I literally can't go anywhere else. Thankfully, this section is almost over. And if you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe and ring the bell to keep up to date with future uploads. And I'll see you in part 3. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the Saffron Trail, where I'm on day 3 of this walk across Essex, and I've just left the little village of Battlesbridge, and today is going to be about 23 to 24 kilometres, so quite a long day, and it's going to end in the city of Chelmsford, but I am going to be going via the villages of Hanningfield, or East Hanningfield, and Danbury as well, where I'm going to head just slightly off the trail to have a look at the church, because there's a large Iron Age fort there as well, which I want to have a little look at. So a little bit of a varied day. When I leave Danbury, I'm going to head downhill, because Danbury is on top of a hill, and that's going to join the Chelmer and Blackwater Canal, so that's going to lead me straight into Chelmsford. Well, thankfully the weather is starting to improve, because about 20 minutes ago there was a really dark bank of cloud moving through and I thought it was going to rain, but it's actually nice and sunny now. And I'm actually passing around East Hanningfield Hall. It's just through the trees over here. And it's quite a historic building in itself, dating to the 16th century, and it's Grade 2 listed. But right alongside was the parish church, and actually I think I might have stumbled across it because there are some graves literally to my left here. There's a couple here and a big gravestone, so the church must have been right here somewhere. I'm going to have a little look, see if I can see any ruins, but this church dated to the 13th century, and sadly it was demolished in the 1960s because it was considered unsafe. But it was actually built on the site of an earlier church, the first recorded church of East Hanningfield, that dated to the 7th century. So people have been living in this area for well over 1500 years. So I'm now here at All Saints Church in East Hanningfield, and this dates to about 1884 to 1885 and is protected as a Grade 2 listed building, but it was built to replace that church that was over at East Hanningfield Hall, and they built it here in a more central position in the village. And I'm going to have a little rest here, sit for about 10 minutes, and then I've got about 6 kilometres, I think, maybe 7, over towards Danbury. So I'm getting pretty close to Danbury now, and this is actually my second view of the church tower. Now if you look just above the trees all the way over there, you can see the spire just on the top, and that is one of the highest points in Essex actually. It's 107 metres above sea level. Now the actual county high point is quite far away over on the Cambridgeshire border, but for this local area that is one of the highest points, and I think I'm probably only about 25, maybe 30 minutes away from that area. I'm going to sit down and have a good break there, because I only took a couple of minutes when I was at Hanningfield, so I'll probably take 15 or 20 minutes there, have some lunch, and also try and spot or have a look at the earthworks of an enormous Iron Age fort that sits right on the summit. So just over here is the Grade 1 listed Church of St John the Baptist, and it dates back to about the 12th century, but it could be just a little bit later. And it sits right on the highest point of this hill, which is also the site of an Iron Age fort, which dates back to probably around 500 or 600 BC. And it covered an area of about 6 acres, and sadly most of the earthworks are actually gone, but I think the section that I'm about to walk past is an element of that outer bank. So it literally sits just here. I'm now walking down the bank here. This is a known line of the earthworks, and then on the north side and also the eastern side, sadly all the earthworks are missing. So there is a little information board just by the entrance to the church, so if you want to know more about that site, it shows kind of the predicted line of the earthworks as well. And it's one of probably, as the board showed, about 12 or so Iron Age forts in the county of Essex. Now from here I've got to do a little bit of a zigzag kind of through Danbury, the village itself, and then I've got a long descent all the way down in towards Chelmsford. So I've just entered the Riffham's estate, and just across the grounds over there I can make out the hall, and it's a Grade 2 listed building that dates back to the early 19th century, so it's not particularly old, but it does sit within these beautiful grounds that you're allowed to walk through thanks to a public footpath. Well, just passed a very noisy A12. Thankfully I went underneath it, and I've just joined the edge of the Chelmsford and Blackwater navigation, which is this river next to me here. And I'm going to follow this all the way into the centre of Chelmsford, right into the city centre. But I think it is about 4 kilometres still until I get there, so I've got some way to go just yet. I did hear a kingfisher as soon as I crossed the river by the footbridge just a bit further back, so I'll keep an eye out on what wildlife I can see. And I think there are a few locks and mills up ahead as well, which I'm quite looking forward to seeing. So I've just arrived here at Barnes Mill, and that's this gorgeous weatherboarded watermill just over there, and it dates back to about 1700 and is Grade 2 listed, and it really marks the last sort of 2 kilometres into Chelmsford, and the weather really has started to change. It's a bit spitty, there's a bit of rain in the air, and also the wind is really starting to pick up, which hopefully I can get back or into the city before it really starts to rain. Oh, this weather was not forecast today. It was meant to be dry all day. Look at the grey cloud up there. It's just getting a little heavier. I think it's getting to the point where I'm going to have to put my waterproofs on. Well, that's a shame, just for the last 2 kilometres into Chelmsford. But if you have enjoyed this part of the walk, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell to keep up to date with future uploads, and I'll see you in part 4. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the Saffron Trail, where I'm on part 4 of this walk across Essex. And where I am at the moment is just on the edge of the city of Chelmsford in Admiral's Park, and this here is actually the site of Beech's Mill. Now the mill itself I think dates back to about 1800, so it's very early 19th century, and it was a 3-arch concrete bridge straddling the River Cann, and it was used to process corn and leather. So today's section of the walk is only going to be short at about 11 or 12 kilometres, and I've decided to end it at Great Waltham, where there's a good bus service back into Chelmsford. And the reason being is that it's going to be about 24ish degrees today, and I don't fancy walking 18 miles all the way to Great Dunmow, so I've decided to split this day down into 2 more manageable sections in this heat. So to begin with, I'm going to head along this footpath that's going to take me around the western side of Chelmsford, and then I'm going to head across fields and open countryside up towards Great Waltham. Well, it's really nice to be out of the city. That wasn't very nice walking through Chelmsford, although the parks were nice. There was the odd sound here or there of beer cans opening at 9:30 in the morning, thanks to some of the local residents. But now I'm out in the countryside, it's much more peaceful, far less traffic, and really quite pretty. Now, where I am at the moment is on the very edge, the very northwestern edge of the city of Chelmsford. Actually, if I turn you this way, I think these houses actually mark the edge or the boundary of the city there. And just ahead, I'm about to pass Brick Barnes Farm, and that's a gorgeous Grade 2 listed building that dates back to the 17th century. And there's this whole section, this whole walk is littered with so many listed buildings, but this is another really pretty one. So just across the field over there is Stacey's farmhouse, and it's another Grade 2 listed building. This one built of brick and actually dates back to the 18th century, but it marks the point where I leave the Centenary Circle. So I've actually been walking another long distance trail, another waymarked one, this one being a 20-mile circular route around Chelmsford. But as I say, it's here that I branch off left to the north, whereas the Centenary Circle continues around to the east. And I've also noticed something on the map that I think I've only got 2 major settlements that I walk through now for the rest of the entire trail, and that would be Great Dunmow and then at the end at Saffron Walden. So no more big towns and no more cities. So this tiny hamlet here is Broad's Green, and it does offer a little village pub just over there, the Walnut Tree, and I think that's probably the first place I can actually get refreshments since I passed the garage just near Chelmsford, so probably a good 9 kilometres or so back, and I'm only about 1.5 kilometres away from Waltham now. So I'm now here at the Grade 1 listed church of St Mary and St Lawrence here in Great Waltham, and this building is very historic. It dates back to Norman time, so it's at least 12th century, but there are some elements that indicate there may have been an earlier building on the site, including these 2 arched windows that have been filled in at the east end here of the chancel. These are 11th, possibly 12th century, so it could just push it back a few more years. And then if you actually look at the building work, this corner of the chancel and the other side, as well as the nave and I think some of the tower, all have this reused Roman brick and tile, so they must have had free access to some of these building materials locally. Now let me take you around to the tower, as there's some other historic features over there as well. So around here at the tower there is a very early 12th century window here, and I think there's one on the other side as well. And then again you can see the reused Roman tile and brick just on the corner of the nave here. Now, if you have enjoyed this part of the walk, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, and also ring the bell to keep up to date with future uploads. And I'm going to leave now because I think there's a wedding about to take place. See you next time. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the Saffron Trail, where I'm on part 5 of this walk. I've just left the village of Great Waltham and I'm ending today at Great Dunmow, which is about 16 to 17 kilometres, so 10 and a half miles. Now, as I'm leaving Great Waltham, I can make out an enormous manor house over there. That's Langley, and it's a Grade 1 listed building that dates back to the 18th century, and it's built in a large H plan of brick, but it also incorporates an older building dating back to about 1620. And randomly, just on the edge of this bit of wood here, there is a pillbox down there as well, looking in very, very good condition. So I'm heading effectively northwest out of Great Waltham to take in multiple little villages, lots of history today as well, which is going to be really nice. Lots of historic houses and some historic churches as well to see before I make my way into Great Dunmow. So just across this field is Hill House, or Hill Farmhouse, and it's a Grade 2 star listed building that dates back to the 16th century, and it actually lists it as a very good example of this type of structure. And it's got exposed timbers on the outside with plaster infill and some of these amazing huge chimneys that stick out the top. So I've just passed around Mab's farmhouse, and it's a gorgeous Grade 2 listed timber frame building that dates back to the 16th or even 15th century, and it was restored in the 20th, so it's in very good condition. But I'm just about to enter Litley Green, which is a tiny hamlet, but I think there might be a village pub there if anyone needs any refreshments. And then I'm heading north out of the tiny hamlet over towards Lees Priory. So just through the trees over there is Lees Priory, and it was originally founded as an Augustinian priory in the very early 13th century. But shortly after the dissolution of the monasteries, when the priory was completely razed to the ground, the first Lord Rich built an enormous manor house here, and these gatehouses and other buildings are all that remain of it. He actually built his big house on top of the original church, and apparently during excavations they could see the original foundations of the church and of his hall. And this actually forms part of a much larger archaeological landscape where they actually terraced fish ponds all the way down the valley. I'm going to be walking through the locations of some of them, and these were actually used to produce fish for the monastic house. So this bridge here actually marks a point where I'm crossing the River Ter, and it's that river that the Augustinian Priory, which is just the other side of these trees, actually used as their water supply and also to fill the fish ponds. So this would have been one of the first fish ponds. There would have been a large bank across here, probably just to kind of terrace it, followed by more fish ponds. And you can tell that it's still very wet here just by the reeds and the foliage. And these ponds actually stretch for about 2.5 kilometres as the river makes a nice curve around a slight hill. And it's all, of course, a scheduled ancient monument. So I'm about 10.5 kilometres in now, and I'm in the village of Felsted, and I've just arrived here at the Grade 1 listed church of the Holy Cross, and this dates all the way back to the early 12th century. In fact, I think the tower and the corner of the nave are the earliest two surviving parts, but there is also a gorgeous Norman arch on the western side, and also the south arcade just on the other side over there is early 12th century as well. So I'm getting close to Little Dunmow now, and that sits just on the edge of Great Dunmow. And I've just joined the Flitch Way, which follows the line of this old railway line for 15 miles, and it links Braintree with Bishop Stortford. And I'm going to be on this for just over a kilometre. So So I've arrived here at Little Dunmow, and this building alongside me here is the Church of St Mary the Virgin, and it's a Grade 1 listed building. But it wasn't originally built as a church, it was built as a lady chapel for an Augustinian priory that was built on the site just over here back in 1096. The house just over there actually dates to the 14th century as well as this chapel, but I think there are a few elements that hint at sort of 13th century as well as 12th century inside, so they may have reused some material from the priory when they were building this lady chapel. So I'm now entering Great Dunmow, and it's taken me just via these parks, which is actually quite pleasant. And if you have enjoyed this part of the walk, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell to keep up to date with future uploads, and I'll see you next time. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the Saffron Trail, where I'm on day 6 of this walk, and this is the very edge of the town of Great Dunmow, and I think it's actually the last town until I get to the end of the walk at Saffron Walden. And today is going to be about 15 kilometres. I haven't measured it exactly, but I'm basically ending in the village of Henham, and I'm actually really quite excited about today because today and tomorrow I think are going to be probably the 2 best days of the walk. They're nice and short, which is always a positive because you can go out and really explore sections of the trail, but also there's an awful lot of history actually, and there is a particular church that I'm really interested in going to because it dates back to the 10th century, so it's over 1,000 years old, and that is, I think, about halfway along today's walk. So currently I'm just heading out of Great Dunmow. I had a lovely breakfast just in the town, and it's just kind of village hopping my way over towards Henham. I've got lots to see. So I've just arrived here at the Grade 1 listed Church of St Mary in Little Eastern, and this building dates back to the 12th century, and in fact there are a few traces just on the north wall of the nave here. Now this is a bit more of a modern window, but there are traces just of Norman windows either side with some Roman brick and tile built into the fabric as well. And the nave itself actually was razed to the ground in the 15th century and rebuilt, but these elements here are still original. And on the south side of the nave is also a blocked 14th century doorway. And apparently inside there are some traces of some 12th century wall paintings, so I'm going to have a quick look inside. And it also sits next to Little Easton Manor, which I'll explain a little bit more about in just a minute. Wow, some of those carvings of the stonework and the marble were absolutely incredible. And there were a few wall paintings as well. I don't know which one was 12th century, but I took some shots of both of them just in case. And I'm actually just by a tiny little green right in front of the church here, and it shows on the map, it shows stocks in Old English letters. So I do wonder if these two old pieces of wood either side were originally stocks in the village. I'll have a quick look at those. And then, as I was saying before, just across the way over there is Little Easton's Manor, and I think the trail actually passes right next to it. And that dates back to the 16th century, and it's grade 2 listed at the moment, but it actually is part of, and they think it was just a small section of one of the wings of an enormous, very elaborate country estate. Now, it would have been absolutely enormous, and sadly was demolished at some point in probably the 19th or 20th century. So this is all that remains of what was once an extravagant country house. So I'm just coming up to the village of Great Easton, and I didn't know I'd be able to see it from the path, but if you look across the field just over there, there is a grassy mound with a little tree on the top, and that's actually a medieval motte of a castle. So basically it's a mound where they would have had a timber palisade around the top with a timber tower on top as well. And it's been dated to the early 12th century, so during the time of the anarchy, where Stephen and Matilda were battling for the throne. So I've just arrived here in Great Easton, and this building is the Grade 1 listed Church of St John, and it dates back to the early 12th century, and with the castle being just behind the trees over there, only 100 metres or so, implies that this is actually contemporary with that structure. So this may have actually come slightly earlier, it might be just slightly later, or they could have been built at exactly the same time. What's really interesting about this building is its fabric. If you look at this end here, in particular, there are courses and courses of red tiles, and they are all Roman. So there must have been some kind of Roman building in very close proximity to this church to reuse the materials. Now on the north side, there is a blocked 13th century doorway, but I think if this door is open, hopefully just behind there is a 12th century arch as well. And inside the building there are several arches, which implies that there may have been some kind of central tower creating a cruciform style church. So I've just arrived here at the Grade 1 listed Church of St Mary the Virgin in Tilton. It's a very unusual church, but the oldest part is the nave here. This was built about 1220, and then the chancel was added in the 14th century, and there's actually some original roof tiles on this one, and it is contemporary actually with a Cistercian abbey that sits just in the field alongside, which I'll have a look at in a minute. But for the time being, I'm going to have a little look in the church if it's open and stop for some lunch. So in the field directly alongside the church are the earthworks and some upstanding remains of St Mary's Abbey. And the abbey was founded in 1153, and it really prospered in the 14th century thanks to the wool trade, which seems appropriate now to have all of the sheep grazing in the field. And in 2010 there was a big geophysical and earthwork survey which revealed lots of buried remains. And there's actually an information board by the church showing an image of the geophysical survey, and another information board just in front of me here which is showing that these fragments appear to be part of the cloister. Now sadly only these two upstanding walls remain, but from aerial photographs during drought you can see the entire layout of this incredible abbey, which sadly was dismantled in 1536 as a part of the dissolution of the monasteries, and it is one of only 3 Cistercian abbeys in the whole of Essex. So I've arrived here at the Grade 1 listed Church of St Mary in Chickney, and this is the church I was talking about right at the start. This is the one that dates back to the Anglo-Saxon period, and it's actually the nave that is the oldest part, which is just here, and this has been dated to the 10th century. And in fact the chancel was also pre-conquest, although it was rebuilt I think in the 13th century, but there are traces of that pre-conquest structure as well in the form of some blocked windows. I think there possibly is one just left of this chancel window here, and this has got to be one of the most complete, I think, Anglo-Saxon churches that I've ever visited. There are 2 windows. There's one just on the south side here and one on the north side. They're both pre-conquest, and the church is actually open, so I'm going to have a little look inside. And another thing I have noticed about this site is the irregular kind of circular shape of the churchyard. And that usually indicates that it was a site of pagan worship prior to the arrival of Christianity. So I am now approaching the village of Henham and the end of this part of the walk. And tomorrow is my final section leading me into Saffron Walden. If you have enjoyed this part, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell to keep up to date with future uploads, and I'll see you next time. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the final day now of the Saffron Trail, where I'm here in the village of Henham. I'm actually just by the parish church. This is the Church of St Mary the Virgin, and it is Grade 1 listed and dates back to the 13th century. Although if I show you the east end window of the chancel here, there are a couple of arches just built into this wall which certainly look like they could be Norman, so it's more than likely that this church actually replaced an older building on the site. Now, today's walk is about 17 kilometres and it's going to end in the town of Saffron Walden, but I've got plenty of things to see along the way. So I've just entered the village of Widdington. I've taken this little detour to come and see Prior's Hall Barn. Now sadly the barn itself is closed at the moment because it's only open between April and September and only at weekends, but it is free to visit, and it's this black barn here. Now this dates to the 14th century and it's a Grade 1 listed building, and it actually says it's one of the best preserved medieval barns in the south of England. But just behind there is also another historic building, and that's Prior's Hall, another Grade 1 listed building, but this one dates back far further. So from the outside, the building looks like a standard medieval house, but actually it was a former chapel, but this chapel dated to the 10th century. So it's actually an Anglo-Saxon chapel that was converted into a medieval house in about the 14th century, and then it's undergone lots of additions and alterations in the later centuries. But I think of all the walks I've ever done, that's possibly one of the most interesting houses that I've ever seen, and it's really sad that it's not like a public building where you can go and have a look. It's a private house, but imagine living in a house knowing that it was built 1,000 years ago. So on the opposite side of the village of Widdington is the Church of St Mary the Virgin, and this is a Grade 2 star listed building that dates back to the 12th century, although it went through a lot of restoration in the mid-19th century, including having the tower completely rebuilt. But if you go inside, there's a few hints of the older part of the church, including a 12th century window on the north wall of the chancel, and also some beautiful stone carvings on one of the south windows. So I'm up on this little plateau at the moment, and it sits at about 105 metres above sea level. In fact, there's a trig point just through the trees over there that I took a little detour to. And this marks my descent down into the village of Newport, which I can see right in front of me, and that gives me an opportunity just to top up on some supplies. And beyond that, I'm going to be heading through Wendon's Ambo and then over towards Saffron Walden, but not before I visit some gorgeous historic buildings, including that of Hadleigh End House. So I've taken a little detour to come and visit the Grade 1 listed Church of St Mary the Virgin here in Newport. And this building dates back to the early 13th century. In fact, the lower courses of the walls here of the chancel you can see are made of stone and rubble, and these are dated to about 1220. So from here I've got a few little hills to go over towards Wendon's Ambo, where there's a very historic church that I want to see. And then it's the final part past Hadleigh End and into Saffron Walden. So I'm on this track in towards Wendon's Ambo, and I wasn't expecting to see something like this, but if you look across the valley over there, that is Shortgrove Park. It's a massive stately home, and in fact the house used to be the stable block, and the original house would have been demolished at some point, but that dates to probably the 18th century, and it is grade 2-star listed. But the landscape around it was actually designed by Capability Brown in the 1750s. So I have just arrived here at the Grade 1 listed Church of St Mary the Virgin in Wendon's Ambo, and this is a particularly historic building because it dates back about 1,000 years, somewhere to the latter part of the 11th century. And the tower has certainly been dated to the 11th century, and on the western side there is a lovely archway made entirely out of Roman tiles. I'm pretty sure I can make out a few just further up the tower as well, and then it's had a lot of additions in later centuries. Well, I've entered the grounds of Audley End House, but I'm a bit disappointed so far because I haven't managed to see the house properly. I'm keeping my eyes out in case I can get a good enough shot. I think it might actually just be down through the trees over there. I got a pretty decent view when I was coming in towards Audley End, but in summer there's no chance you'll see it because of the canopy of trees. But it is a palatial country house, and it's owned and managed by English Heritage, and it dates back to 1605 to 1615, and of course is grade 1 listed. But what's really impressive about this house is that it's only 1/3 of the size it was originally when it was built. So it's actually gone through a lot of demolition through the centuries, mainly in the late 1700s, where the house was reduced in size multiple times. If I look through the trees over there, I can just make out parts of the roof. Now this is my final path into Saffron Walden. In fact, this is my first view of the town. If I just sneak off the path a little bit, I can make out the parish church just over there, which is the official end of the trail, but I'm going to go just a little bit beyond that to have a look at the castle, which sits just behind. But I've got one more historic treat to see just before I enter the town. So just as you enter the town of Saffron Walden, you pass something called the Rappel Ditches or Battle Ditches, and actually had enormous earthwork. That was the original boundary for the medieval town of Chipping Walden, or sometimes it was known as just Walden. And then later into the 13th century, the town was known as Market Walden because they actually changed the location of a local market from Newport, just a few miles up the road, to here, to this town. And then when they discovered that the climate and the soils around the town were perfect for growing the saffron crocus, they actually renamed the town to Saffron Walden, which was in about the 17th century, and it's been known that ever since, and of course gives the trail its name. So I'm now here at the Grade 1 listed Church of St Mary in Saffron Walden, and it officially marks the end of the Saffron Trail, although there is a castle just the other side of the houses over there, so I'm going to have a little look at Walden Castle because I can't miss out on such a historic treat as that. But this building dates back to the 13th century, and it had a lot of rebuilding in later centuries, but it's actually on a slightly different alignment. It's not on a proper east-west alignment, which implies that it probably followed the blueprint or the ground print of an older church that was on the site, and there are some remains of some Anglo-Saxon crosses, I believe, inside. So I'll have a little look, see if I can spot those, and also I'm going to head over to the castle now. So the parish church sits just through the trees over there, and I'm now at Walden Castle. And this, of course, is a Grade 1 listed building and a scheduled ancient monument, and dates back to Norman times. Now, no one knows exactly when this castle was built, but they know it was handed over to King Stephen in 1144, so clearly it was built before then. And the style of the castle implies it was built in sort of the first or second quarter of the 12th century. And it's going through some renovation works and restoration at the moment, so it's all fenced off, which is a bit of a pain, but it is quite impressive still. A nice big square keep, and there's still stands to probably about 10 or 15 feet in places. And it was part of a Motte and Bailey style castle, so this castle sat on top of a mound, and the surrounding ditches are still preserved in the current street layout and street plan of Saffron Walden. Now, if you have enjoyed this wonderful 71-mile walk across Essex, hit like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.